ourselves? Yes, sir.
Chris Polakowski, from Sweetland Farm.
Bob, would you introduce yourself?
Bob Pittiger, Justice of the Peace.
Emily Share, Justice of the Peace.
Lily Tryman, Town Clerk and BCA Clerk.
Elise Manny, Justice of the Peace, BCA Chair.
Suzanne Leiter, Justice of the Peace.
Dave Primal, Justice of the Peace.
Jed Bacon, Justice of the Peace.
Aaron Smith, Lister.
November, Lister. This is you.
And
You're the ones with the accent, not me.
Kevin Lean from KRT is online. So we are opening the hearing about the Sweetland Farm appeal. This is parcel number 05-095.300. I'm gonna ask you all to take an oath. Under the pains and penalties of perjury, do you solemnly swear that the evidence you give and the cause under consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth? Thanks very much. So now if you'd sign that, that would be great.
Just one time in the top signature spot and then.
Chris, did you get the rules and regulations ahead of time? So you know, 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes.
5 minutes on.
All right, Cheryl, you want to introduce the property? Oh, excuse me? Does anybody at this table need to recuse themselves for any reason? Cheryl.
Thank you. Okay, this is parcel ID 05-095.300, which includes 3 different cards. It is property located at 742 Vermont Route 132, also known as Sweetland Farm. It's several buildings. I won't go through all that detail, but the building and yard items are valued at $484,200, and there's 157.94 acres valued at $1,054,800, with the total of all of that total $1,539,000. In the 25 grand list.
Okay. The word's yours.
It seems we have a confusion about .300 or .400. We're after the 21.19 acres, which is our upper parcel. And where our house is.
So I'm just looking at where that for an email. The clerk, it's your meeting. I mean,
The question is whether the parcel idea is,
Am I wrong?
well, I'm
It
reading,
says 97 Kerwin.
Yeah, I'm after 97 Kerwin. Our entire parcel, well, I got my 5 minutes taken, so I'll get my going. Our entire parcel can't be sold separately. 400 and 300 are inextricably linked forever.
Right.
There's a special easement on the property called an option to purchase at ag value. Makes it so it can basically only be sold through a farmer. It reduces the value. How much it reduces the value is the question. The assessors applied a reduction in value of 50% exactly. That seems arbitrary. When asked about it, they said they don't really have any expertise in assessing what an OPAT property is. And I present one comparable. I think it's the whole property, I think is probably double what it actually is worth. It would be the single most expensive OPAT property in the entire state if it was sold at the value that it's at. We have fought with the town over this before. Last time we fought, we went through the BCA, we went to court. The town finally hired an independent appraiser. They came back with a value of 34% of what the town was trying to assess us for. Basically in line with ours, we settled halfway between. That was 2016. And it's evolved since then. I think it's fine that the value went up. The value went up, if you look on the second page, almost exclusively on our house, which is where we actually pay the taxes, because everything else is in current use. The fact that it all runs to the house, that seems unfair to me. There's been no improvements to the house. There's been lots of improvements to the barns. There's been lots of improvements to the land. There's ponds dug, there's irrigation for it, there's an orchard planted and matured, things like that. All I'm asking for is to split the 63% that it increased equally on all the parts of the property. And then we'll just go away and we don't have to fight for the town over it, and that'd be fair enough. And so I hope that's relatively easy to do, and, there is a supporting, you know, I think the whole value is still pretty high, I think the town's basically fleecing the current use program. We have a comparable here at the end, it's comparable in almost every way, it's got the same acreage, it's got the same type of improvements, same infrastructure, same part of the land that's out and everything. $875,000, it's sold in 2022, in Stratford, it's got frontage on the same river, they don't own, so it's really quite comparable. And, if you add up all of the stuff that's ours, it's over 2 million, so I think ours is pretty hard to argue, it's good. We don't really need to argue about the stuff that's in current use, so that part of the question.
Okay, thanks a lot. Carol?
So the listers prepared for parcel ID 05095300, which is in the original email received through the clerk. So that's what we have wrote up our information on. They are not here to discuss parcel 04.05095,400. It's just not what was presented. So I don't know what happens next, but we're clearly on two different pieces of property, and we were led to believe that this one we presented was the correct one.
Well, I guess what I would say is, if Chris is okay with it, I would be more than willing for us to receive more information prior to whenever we visit their property. So we probably,
Technically speaking, the appeal was on 05095300. That was what was appealed. We saw, and there were 3 grievances when we held grievances. There were 3 different parcel ID numbers. Of those 3, one was written as an appeal. Not any of the other ones did we receive an appeal, or did the BCA receive an appeal?
Does appear I made a typo in there, I'm sorry, with the context of it, if you read the rest of the email, I've been intending the same one, it talks about our house and the rest of the email context of. This, I get it, I made it.
Referring to this, that we didn't have anything when we wrote up our memo other than this information.
So are we talking about 2 parcel IDs or are we talking about 1?
My intent was only to do the ask for, evaluation change on 1, and I should have typed 400, and I typed 300.
Right, and then the additional information we got was 97 Kerwin Hill Road, 05095300, but that one is 400.
That's
so-
correct, that propagated the error.
Right, and so,
but we did get it before the meeting today, this.
But they don't have
We,
the information, they were reacting to a different part.
they're incongruous.
I know there are 2 different parcels, but I'm saying that you didn't get this today because we got this
we
today.
had to provide 2 days ahead of time our memo.
Right.
And that was Sunday, not today. So we drafted it based on the email of the appeal.
Right, Cheryl, I get that. But in fairness, everybody, I understand that you're not prepared today. I understand that. But we're not gonna visit the property until next week.
But which property are you going to visit, the one that he cited or the one that he's saying that he wants to appeal now? Because they're not the same.
I understand that. But my point also, and we're gonna look at the house site. But my understanding is that they're also all tied together, that they cannot be sold separately.
Okay. An appeal of one of the 3 was made in an email on August 29th.
I
The
understand that.
other 2 were not being appealed. That is an important part, and I would argue against hearing something different today or going forward.
I would too.
I would,
Well, what we're gonna do is table this. Cause I gotta do some homework. In the meantime, assuming that we are able to go forward at some point, we do at some point have to see the property that you are appealing, which is the house, correct? What did I do with the piece of paper?
There was a deadline by which to file.
I understand all that, Penny. and I've gotta go back and I've gotta figure out if we can do this. So we're gonna let it go for now. We're gonna schedule a visit in case we can move ahead, and I'm gonna talk to the state, and we'll see where we go from there. So just, everybody please relax, and we'll move forward. If in fact we are able to keep going, we have to come out and we have to see your property. What's that?
No problem anytime.
And we're gonna propose that we do that on Monday, the 20th. And I would aim for 4.
Good with it.
And so at this point, we are going to recess. And we'll get back to all present as to what happens from here out. We're adjourned. Yes. Good to go. Ernie,
Ernie, you tell her this one.
Cheryl Lindbergh, Lister.
Sam Smith Lister.
Bob Whitaker, Justice to the Peace.
Not for you, Jed.
Sorry, Jed.
No, I blew it.
Emily here, Justice of the Peace.
Lily Tryman, Town Clerk and BCA Clerk.
Felix Manny, Justice of the Peace, BCA Chair.
Suzanne Lighter, Justice of the Peace.
David Kreml, Justice of the Peace.
Jen Baker, Justice of the Peace.
Okay,
Mark Aquila, resident of New Boston.
welcome, Mark. So we are here to discuss, is it Aquila?
Aquila?
Aquila. Parcel ID 11-041-000. And before we get started, Mark, we need to take an oath. Under the pains and penalties of perjury, do you solemnly swear that the evidence you give in the cause under consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yeah.
Now you sign that form. Did you get a copy of the rules and regulations?
Yes.
Do you know how this is gonna go? 5 minutes, and then to us? More or less?
Yeah.
Does anybody at this table need to recuse themselves? No, they do not. Daryl, if you'd be so kind.
Yes. Highlighting their key points. This is Article 11-041.000, which has two cards. One of the cards is located at 688 New Boston Road. It's a ranch style dwelling with 42.9 acres. The acreage is assessed at $363,300, and the dwelling is assessed at $257,400 with a $500 assessment for an outbuilding, or a total of $621,200. 633 New Boston Road is on card 2. Temporary style dwelling. Dwelling is valued at $729,700 with yard items of $900. It's on 2.94 acres, assessed at $214,400 with total grand list assessment of $1,566,200.
Mark?
Is it safe to assume that you've read the one-page document that I submitted?
It is.
I think, first of all, thank you everyone for taking the time to talk today. I went through the appeal process twice, actually also 5 years ago after the appeal
building. And even at that time, it was brand newly constructed, building. I appreciated the back and forth with the team to understand what the value was and then compare it to comparables. At this point, with the recent appraisal, the land price specifically was really extraordinarily high compared to peer properties. I saw the lister's comments from the document that you also sent out yesterday. So I don't want to discuss that further. If that's the recommendation and that would move forward, that would make me content and I would walk away happy that this process has served it as I really expected. I think the only other thing that came up from from the second deal with the listers a month ago was that the homestead versus non-homestead was adjusted. My understanding was that the land underneath the house would also be allocated as non-homestead, since I'm personally renting that building. And it was not, and so if this is the venue to discuss that, fantastic, and if that venue should be elsewhere, I would love if someone told me what to do. And that's really all I have to say, so thank you for taking the time to review the materials that are submitted and the time to meet 2 more times over the summer.
Okay, thanks. Cheryl?
Okay, thank you. Since it was the appellant's last comment, I'll start with that. And, as you know from a previous appeal, land owned by, a property owner, all is homestead. And only the dwelling is non-homestead, which is rented out. And we provided that to you in a previous appeal, so you'll have that for this one as well. That is the state's process on that. Getting into our memo, there's a few technicalities of some things that we have proposed for correction. And there was a neighborhood code that was inconsistent on the R2, so that it is, needs to be categorized as N2 instead of RG, which will provide a reduction in the land on card 2 by $48,000. We'll bring it down to 168,400, which will be in line with the comparables provided by the appellant. And that is a recommendation we make. We were reviewing current use records. We noted that there was a slight error in the numbers allocated between the categories, and we included the report that we worked from the state to reflect what is agricultural and what is in forest current use programs. And so we proposed that adjustment, and that provided a small reduction in the land. And lastly, in our review for this appeal, we noted the style of the dwelling on card 2 is listed as a contemporary, but it's our strong opinion that this is really a colonial, and we would recommend that change as well in this appeal process, should the BCA under inspection determine that to be appropriate. So with all of the recommended changes above, we would end at a land list value of $1,554,700.
Questions from this table? Yeah,
Does changing from contemporary to colonial have any effect on the values on the listing card? Or is it-
Yes, a contemporary is in the system at 155 to start the calculation of the assessment, and a colonial is 185. So there's a $30 difference in a basic per square foot.
And that change shown in the number that you ended up with?
Yes, that last number that we stated here would include that change as well.
well,
Kevin from KRT is online. Kevin, could you just describe the difference between contemporary and colonial? Is there a definition that we can use?
Well, the colonial is, traditional to New England, obviously. Center entrance colonial, contemporary design, came about post-World War II, open air, cathedral ceilings, and an open concept floor plan, whereas, the colonial was always pegged around the center entrance chimney. And the rooms typically a square. It's essentially what it boils down to. Just looking from this property from the exterior, I mean, we call it a contemporary because it sometimes, in how they construct these homes nowadays, you almost think that, well, it's not really a traditional colonial, and it could be a contemporary without getting inside to it. It may be a contemporary just looking from the outside, just from experience of seeing some of these properties. They don't always appear to be what they are. So, but an interior inspection would more or less confirm what someone's opinion of it would be.
That answer your question,
Yes.
Suzanne?
And related to that, you don't have a center door entrance, right? Your entrance is on the end?
Correct.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, I guess it was an inspection over the summer, and again, when it was built, and it's two separate units, so like there's a, if this was relevant, I can tell you it's totally not relevant, cut me off, please. But
We'll inspect it too. Yeah.
Then somebody said, yeah, you come in, it's a living, kitchen, dining room, that's all one room. And upstairs, there's 3 bedrooms.
Emily, you had a
On the
question?
left, yeah, and on the other side, it's you walk in and you're in
Yeah.
a kitchen, living room,
We're gonna see all that.
2 bedrooms, so.
Well, Emily's first.
But was this a follow, so it sounds, I'm hearing from Kevin, it's a combination of exterior and interior assessment to determine the style?
Kevin?
Yep. Could I say that again, please?
Is it a combination of exterior and interior that determines the style?
Sometimes, when you're looking at, when you're out on field review, I don't know, my experience recently working in northern New England with these types of structures is, sometimes they have that Vermont farmhouse look where you think it's a colonial, but then, eventually you go online to see, what it sells for, and a lot of these things, they turn into, you open up the photos on them, and it's really a contemporary when you get on the inside. So how do you want to look at it? Do you want to look at it, it's subjective. Do you want to look at it as a pure colonial, from the exterior, but once you get inside, it's an open concept floor plan, and it's, sometimes they call them contemporary colonials, but you have to make you have to make a decision. So, from experience, I was just looking at this and the way it was, the way it lay there, and I was like, well, geez, maybe it's, it's built in 218, so a lot of these northern New England, they seem to be even more contemporary in design than they are colonial, so that's why I went with contemporary.
That answer your question, Suzanne?
Yeah, this isn't house, this is related to the land, the site acre, the first acre that's vacant, so I assume that wasn't ever corrected when the house got built. I'm not sure it affects the value, but.
So that got corrected when we were
Okay.
working on this because it is not vacant, and needed to be corrected.
Right, so the value that we gave of the 1,554,700 would incorporate changing that from vacant to site acre with a dwelling.
Other questions from this side of the room? Okay. The next step, Mark, is that we need to, come into a site inspection. And looking at the calendar, hold on just a minute, getting up to speed. Could you potentially be available on Thursday, the 23rd at, 4:45?
How long would that take?
I don't know, half hour, 45 minutes?
Yeah.
We,
I have a work appointment, I can't move at 4:45 in Dartmouth. I have to be there in person, so it's possible.
Okay, hold on.
Other dates that might be convenient.
how about Wednesday, the 22nd, same time?
Wednesday, what you said for,
Oh, hold on, that's not a good date for other people.
how many people?
Hold on. Tuesday, the 21st, also at 3:45. Could you do that?
That's easier to move than my Thursday one, so short.
So Tuesday, 3:45, we could do?
Yeah, am I allowed to confirm this week with the
Sure.
residents of said apartment? Okay.
Just let Lily know one way or the other what you can do, but we'll assume it's Tuesday, 3:45 unless we hear otherwise.
Yeah, we're playing for 3:45,
Correct.
and just 3 votes.
Yeah, well, there could be more of us. There's at least 3. And sometimes there's more.
Okay, during the actual inspection, one of our tenants has a small child that they're sleeping in, so we did not go into one of the rooms. Is that acceptable to you if that were an issue with the parent of said small child?
Fine with me.
Oh, look, I mean, I'm sitting here shaking my head.
You know, I'll get back to you. I'll get back to you. If it 4 o'clock seems like a safe time, better than noon or whatever we were, so. If it's okay, I will work.
You'll let us
Aim for
know.
the 21st, 3:45.
Technically, the statutes say denying entrance to any part
Right.
is considered withdrawal of your appeal.
Okay. Well, let's pick time when the child's not sleeping.
Not now.
Anyway, so
I can be so quiet. I have 3 children.
if you, can't do the 3:45 and that is regular nap time,
Yeah.
let Lily know
Reason.
and let us know when we can get in.
Yep.
Cause then we gotta figure out if 3 of us can get there.
Right.
It's required that 3 of us go.
Okay.
Phil, did I see a hand raised?
Well, I was just gonna mention, you got their house first. So you could start at that house and then go to the other one,
Right, but who knows
so it would be after.
what the issue is.
Later on, and so I was just trying to point that out.
Yeah, we could
But
go
you need to inspect,
the entire property, which means both houses.
sorry, when you say both houses, 688 and 633, and both apartments at 633? Okay, sure. Okay.
All right, then, we'll see you then. We are recessed, oh, until, hold on.
It's just a good one.
I got you.
Ellie, you might want to clarify which house we're gonna go to first.
Yeah, for timing.
Where are we?
We're going to.
Oh, sorry.
5:15.
So we are recessing until November 5th at 5:30.
Yes.
Right.
On November 5th at 5:30, we will have visited your property. We will have written a site inspection report. And we will meet again. We'll receive that report. You can be present, you're not required to be, and present more information if so. The listers can do the same. After we have received the report and we've heard that, we'll end the session and we'll go into deliberations. For which you and the listers are not present. Okay,
2 next steps, if I just tell this back to you to make sure I understand, on Tuesday, October 21st at 3:45 right now, we will graciously host at least 3 of you at 688 New Boston Road, and then or prior at 633 New Boston Road for a tour of both apartments and the land. And then I shouldn't expect to hear from you until November 5th at 5:30 in this room.
correct.
If I choose to come in person, but I'm not required to come in person.
That's true.
And then at some point after that, I'll get a paper that says. this is
Within 15 days,
15 days.
you get a
Okay.
decision.
And that's the one that if for some reason I am up in arms on it, I can appeal to the state.
Correct.
You'll get a lot of emails from me explaining each step as we go through it, don't worry.
It's been excellent so far.
Okay. We're recessed until the fifth.
Say again?
We are recessed until the fifth.
You're done.
You're free to go.
Except for the 21st.
Yes.
But that's not a
It's not a-
BCA meeting.
I was worried when you said recess till the 5th. I thought we just canceled the 21st, but okay.
No,
I-
no, no,
All
no.
right, thank you.
No such luck.
Have a good rest of your day. Reschedule.
Okay, good to go.
Okay, hang on just a second here. Ernie, would you like to start the introductions?
Ernie, you can tell me this one.
Carol Lindbergh, Lister.
And Smith, Mister.
Jeff Baker, Justice of the Peace.
Dave Grummel, Justice of the Peace.
Suzanne Leiter, Justice of the Peace.
Felix Manny, Justice of the Peace, BCA Chair.
Willie Tryman, Town Clerk, BCA Clerk.
Emily Chair, Justice of the Peace.
Bob Pittiger, Justice of the Peace.
And you guys are?
Elizabeth Wilson.
Very last name.
Okay. I'm gonna ask you all to take an oath. Under the pains and penalties of perjury. No, I'm not. Hold on. First, I'm gonna introduce the parcel, which is, this is the Wilson hearing, and we're talking about parcel ID number 15-055-011 at 40 Norwich Meadows, Unit 11. Now, under the pains and penalties of perjury, do you solemnly swear that the evidence you give in the cause under consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth? There's a form in front of you that has some signatures on it. So if each of you, yes, if each of you would sign one line under where I have signed.
Under the witness signature?
Correct. Did you get a copy of the rules and regulations? Do you know how this will go?
Yes.
Okay. Does anybody at this table need to recuse themselves for any reason? No. Cheryl?
Okay, so this is parcel ID 15-055.011, located at 40 Norwich Meadows, Unit 11. It's a condominium / townhouse style dwelling with 2 stories and an attic. It has it was built in 1985 with 2 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, and it has a wooden bed. The assessed value of the dwelling is $392,200, with the carport assessed at $1,900. There is no land assessed with this, so the total grand list assessment in the 2025 grand list is $395,100.
Floor is yours.
Sorry. Good evening, and thank you for your time and for your service. I'm appealing the 2025 tax assessment for 40 Norwich Meadows, Unit 11. My appeal is not about market value per se, but about uniformity and fairness in the assessment process. Before 2025, identical units in Norwich Meadows were assessed almost identically, within just a few $1,000s of one another for decades. After the 2025 reappraisal, identical or nearly identical units now differ by more than $170,000. Note, there have been no structural changes or square footage added to any of these units. That outcome cannot be reconciled with Vermont's constitutional and statutory requirements of proportional taxation. Vermont's proportional contribution clause, 32 BSA 4601, requires taxes should be uniformly assessed on the list of persons taxed. Listers are sworn to list the same without discrimination on a proportionate basis. Case law supports this, that when fair market value is determined, it must be equalized so comparable properties bear comparable burdens. Uniformity is not optional, it is the foundation of fairness and public trust. Information presented in my appeal compares Norwich Meadows units that are identical or functionally identical to mine. Let me give you an example In 2024, unit 2, which is identical to unit 11, but also has a basement and does not face Highway 5, was assessed at 3,700 more than my unit. After the assessment, it was assessed at 11,900 less than my assessment. After the Board of Listers adjustment, it is now assessed at $143,200 less than my unit. These patterns are seen in other property as well, and appear arbitrary and inconsistent with the principle of uniformity. In response to the lister's comment, the listers state that inequities resulted because only some Norwich Meadows owners filed grievances. I found this to be a very troubling response, because under the Vermont Constitution, the duty of uniformity rests with the town, not individual taxpayers. This principle of uniformity is not discretionary. It requires the town to ensure that all properties are appraised on a consistent, proportionate basis. Uniform assessment is a constitutional obligation, and it cannot depend on who chooses to appeal. Moreover, it appears that my adjusted valuation is 64% more than my 2018 purchase price, not my assessed value of $179,900 in 2024. During the last meeting with the Board of Listers, my position was and remains that a fair assessment would be consistent with the town average of 64% from my assessed value. The increase in my unit is 120%, 2 times that of the town average. It's unclear why this number was chosen and why this differs from the treatment of other units presented in the lister's appeal. These inconsistencies show that my unit is addressed disproportionately high relative to both market evidence and peer units. Because credible evidence shows non-uniform treatment, the presumption of correctness in the grand list no longer applies, and the burden shifts to the town to demonstrate compliance with both constitutional and statutory requirements of uniform appraisal. The town now bears the obligation to rectify these disparities and ensure that my unit, and indeed all Norwich Meadows units, are assessed on a proportionate and equitable basis. As a temporary remedy, I respectfully request the board to adjust unit 11 to reflect the town-wide average increase of 62 or 64% on my 2024 assessed value, pending a consistent equalization of all Norwich Meadows units. Or revert my property to its 2024 listed value until a constitutionally compliant reassessment is completed. Either remedy would prevent the current inequities from being lost. I appreciate the board's careful deliberation and its responsibility to uphold both the letter and the spirit of Vermont's tax laws. I recognize that reassessment is a complex process, but fairness and uniformity are fundamental to public confidence in the town's administration. Having shown credible evidence of inequity, it is now the town's responsibility to address and correct these inconsistencies to restore proportionality across comparable properties. This appeal is not offered to seek special treatment, but to strengthen confidence that our municipal processes are fair, consistent, and grounded in integrity. Thank you all for your service to the town of Norwich.
Thank you. Cheryl.
Yes. We did hand out, packet. This is the memo and the copy record cards reflecting the information that we got in the memo. My apologies for clicking on just the memo when I sent it to the clerk. And I don't know if the appellant has a copy of this. Yeah, okay. So, so to that point, first of all, we experienced a town-wide reappraisal this year, and to accomplish that, the reappraisal firm did a sales analysis and updated the town of Norwich with new land and building tables. That is a process that they must go through, and what happens during a town-wide reappraisal. I know many people would have loved to keep last year's values for this year throughout the town, but that was not what would happen after a town-wide reappraisal. And those values last year were really, as I mentioned before, 2016 tables. So they are 9 years old. I will let KRT speak to the inequity question. However, what I would like to point out as we go through the couple of cards is that everybody, when you have a reappraisal, everybody in town gets a change of assessment letter required by Vermont statute and have the right to grieve their assessment. if only some of the people choose to do that in town, that is their choice. And may feel that their assessment was in line, maybe not. But we can't determine who will do that, nor can we ask people to grieve. They have the right to grieve. And those that wanted to chose to do that. What we have noticed and learned over the past couple months with the grievance process and now the appeals is that the units at Norwich Meadows can vary dramatically depending upon personal maintenance choices. And that, there's a homeowner's fee that takes care of the capital improvements, but individuals take care of their own unit. And that is very different when you are inside of the different units that we've been in over the course of the grievance process. When we inspected and adjusted a unit number back in the grievance process to $304,700 for the April 1st assessment in the grand list, that unit just sold for $410,000. So there's a distinct demand and representation of fair market value that's occurring on these units. The other units that have been given to us as comps by KRT also have property record cards included in our packet. And it's good to point out to you all that when this particular unit was purchased at $241,000, it had an assessed value of $179,900. So that purchase price was 34% over that assessment. Today, if you compare the $395,100 reduced assessment by the listers at grievance to the 241 purchase price, you're looking at a 64% increase. Other ones that are in the packet, you'll note I've highlighted, or we have highlighted, sale prices showing very strong desire to purchase these units way above assessed value. And in some cases, they're still slightly below the most recent, or above, slightly above a most recent purchase price, like unit number 1 is assessed at $494,900, and the last purchase in 2024 was $455,000. Very close assessment to purchase price. Another one at 10 Norwich Meadows has a purchase price of $599,000, and yet it's assessed at $569,100 in the grand list. And I continue to point out how the market value of these has increased over time. And, you have the cards and the information to support that. So we are very comfortable with the assessment for this unit at $395,100.
Kevin, do you want to speak to consistency? Was that what you?
Well, Kevin, yeah, I think that he could explain as well, anything that he would consider inequitable. I think he's had, his work on
Kevin Lane from KRT is online. Kevin, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. When you conduct a revaluation, the first thing you do before you even make any adjustments or anything is you run the sales to their assessment. Before you conduct you just want to see where you are. So I submitted a document to the listers, and the assessed value to the sales ratio for units 1, 10, and 14. These were all qualified sales that occurred in that time frame. Unadjusted prior to the revaluation, they were at 42% of market value. Now, they were adjusted, the 3 sales, the median assessment for those were at 95% of market value. Then, Norwich overall was at 97%. But I went back and looked at all the sale prices of all the units that transferred since the 2016 revaluation. And, the subject property alone in 2018, it sold for $241,000. Well, that assessed to sales ratio had already dropped to 75%. So from essentially 2016, this project has been way under assessed in relation to market value. One of our axioms is that a revaluation clears up inequities. And when I say that, people always talk about percentage increase, but percentage increase is not addressed in the Vermont Constitution with regard to assessment. It also is not addressed in the other 5 New England states that we work at. Percentage increase is just a byproduct of what occurred. So we're not pressing a button saying everybody goes up. We're analyzing what the market's willing to pay. In some segments of the market, they pay more than others. For example, we've done some revaluations in northern Maine this year, and towns, they haven't been assessed for quite some time, for 20 years maybe. So a lot of these towns, the value is the value of the towns increased 86%. But if you look at all the waterfront, they're up at 125%. So that's just a byproduct of what's going on. The market pays more for different segments than the others. If you look at this condominium project, I mean, it's essentially been underassessed for years. I mean, a revaluation clears up inequities. So we're at 95% of market value. It's 3 sales in the project. There's 12 units in there. That's 25% of the units have transferred. The subject property is assessed at $268 a square foot. I mean, it's almost identical to Unit 12. That's assessed at $390, $400. The subject assessed for $395, $100. Unit 12 has 128 more square feet than the subject, but the subject also has 100% of central air. So, I mean, is it really inequitably assessed in relation to what's going on in the condominium project? No, I don't think so.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. Emily?
I have a question and then maybe a follow-up to Kevin. So it seems like the comparable units from your point of view are 11, 12, 2, and 3.
They're exactly the same except 2 and 3 have basements.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
all of the units that I've listed here actually have in practice the exact same square footage. They're different in your list, but we have the original builder documents that say they're the same.
Yeah. So it seems like from looking at this, the one that's most discrepant is unit 2 in the value, correct?
Yes.
And I'm wondering if Kevin can comment on that one. The other ones seem a little bit more in line.
Unit 3 is also strange. And I think that's 6 and
It's
7.
a little higher.
Look,
Yeah.
7, that changed from 62,000 above to 88,000 below.
So I'm asking because I think that what we've heard other appeals. I think the interior units are the most like sort of apples to apples, and these are the 4 interior.
Exactly.
So
I'm
sort
just
of
looking
wondering
at the
about.
swings in this uniformity argument. I wasn't
Yeah.
arguing market value, I'm arguing fairness of process.
Yeah, no, I see it here, so I'm wondering if Kevin could comment on unit 2 relative to unit 11.
Yeah, unit 2.
Okay.
So the other 3, if you look at the subject property in unit 12 and unit 3, they all have a 3rd level of finish. Unit 2 does not have a 3rd level of finish. What
does that mean?
Square footage difference?
Yeah, I mean, there's more value when you finish the upstairs, and they don't have living area on unit 2. It's not assessed. If you look at all the property record cards on the sub area detail, you'll see that the subject property, unit 12 and unit 3, they all have a degree of a finished 3rd level living area, and there's no. If you look at the card for unit 2 on the sub area detail, it's blank. It doesn't exist.
Did you visit unit 2?
Hold on, let him finish.
Oh, sorry.
Kevin, go ahead.
So that's the biggest difference. It's just more living area.
Kevin, the next question was whether or not you, KRT, had been inside unit number 2.
Yeah, we did a call back on, May 20th of 2024.
More questions from this table?
Also, Madam Chair,
Yeah.
there were notes around that, you know, they had water damage around the sliding door, the screws are popping through the walls.
You're
And the
looking at
fireplaces.
unit number 2?
And the fireplace was sealed.
Gotcha. Cheryl, you had a question?
I just a couple last comments. I failed to mention was the appellant's discussion about, the Vermont Constitution's proportional contribution clause. That is applying to taxes. That is what the, that taxes are applied uniformly, and that means applying a municipal tax rate to every property. It is not to do with assessment. So that one I would have to say is not relevant because of that. And I also was going to mention that inspections are important. Once again, not every property in Norwich during the reappraisal process was inspected. So if there wasn't an inspection at a certain unit at Norwich Meadows, it's difficult to know that it's captured the right value. Maybe there is something that wasn't captured and that unit is more valuable. But because it didn't happen, we're comparing something that may have been inspected to something that hasn't. And it's just one of those facts.
But in this case, we know that unit 2 wasn't.
Right, but other ones.
Yeah, I understand. Pam?
I just wanted to address the comment about, applying the townwide average of 62% to any valuations. If it were that simple, we would have someone come in, give us the sales analysis, tell us what is the townwide average of, increase in sales over the assessments. And with a broad brush, we just take everybody up 62%, and our reappraisal would be a lot simpler, a lot cheaper, but that's not the way reappraisals are done. They're done on an individual basis because properties change over time. People do additions, they do improvements, and so each property has to be looked at individually.
What is the townwide average? We've heard it mentioned several times during this process, not this particular hearing, but over the course, and it varies from person to person.
Okay, so at the grand list timeframe, not the abstract, because
Right.
there were some errors there that had to get removed. It was about 59%.
59.
59.
Thank you.
That's what went up.
The average.
The townwide average was 59%.
Right, from
And-
2016.
Right, and one other point is that, as Cheryl mentioned, if someone does not read their value, we're at a point where the listers cannot go in and make any changes on a wholesale basis and say, well, we're gonna change the neighborhood code, or we're gonna change, you know, the grade factor or whatever on every parcel in this particular area. So it has to be on a grievance basis.
Other questions from this group?
I had a question for you all. I mean, according to the Vermont Handbook on Property Tax Assessment, it did read as if the, uniformity principle had to do with how the values were being assessed. And it looked like the case law supporting that was again applying for that thing. If you could help me understand these differences in interpretation, I'd really appreciate it.
Do you guys have a comment?
When the reassessment was, the reappraisal was done, each parcel was, given a value by KRT. When someone grieves, they come in and say, we think there was an error based on X, Y, or Z. And so the listers have to, at that point, make a determination as to whether there needs to be a correction. So anything that changed between the abstract and the grand list was something that was based on a grievance. And the listers agreed with the appellant to at least some extent that there needed to be a correction.
It just seems strange that for 3 decades, these properties were $4,000 apart, and now they're looking at several $100,000 apart. And then units that were previously valued, like unit 7 at 62,000 more, a nicer unit is now valued at 88,500 less. Same square footage, nicer unit, beautiful piece of land, not facing Highway 5 with a basement. And so it's that all over the place. It actually makes it very hard for a neighborhood because you have neighbors living right next door where the property tax in this unit is 3 times higher than the one right next door. And so that principle of uniformity for like properties, when I read the statute, seemed to be pretty equally applied for like property. And that seems here with these values that have gone willy-nilly to not necessarily be reflecting that principle. And had it not stood for the previous 3 decades, and I appreciate that things change, but do they really change that much?
More questions? The next phase of this process is that a minimum of 3 of us have to inspect your property. And so my question to you would be whether you are available to have your property inspected on Thursday, the 23rd at 4.
Working in. We'll have to have things on there. October 23rd is next Thursday.
Correct.
At what time?
4 o'clock.
Let's do it.
So a minimum of 3 of us will be at your place then. We will then write a site inspection report. And we will reconvene here on November 5th. We'll present the site inspection report. You have minutes to say one more thing. The listers do as well. At that point, we will close and we'll go into deliberations. It doesn't include you guys. And within 15 days of that, you'll get a written decision in the mail.
Great, thank you very much. And I added in the handout a map of the pieces that, like, the Nikki said that was a little bit confusing before, so. Yeah. Thank you.
One last thing,
Yeah.
on November 5th, your hearing will be at,
5:30 p.m.
You just did one of five.
yeah,
No, we did one at 5:15.
we did it at 5:30.
You
I
did
think.
5:30, okay, then 5:45.
You're not required to be, you're not required to be here on the 5th. You can if you choose to be.
Thank you for your time, everybody.
We're recessed until the 5th.
Okay, so it's 5:30 for appointment.
Right.